This video is going to cover the basics of getting a evaluation rating scheme into the database. There's always room for improvement beyond this, but just to get us started with something. So taking the inspiration from the Excel spreadsheet of evaluations tracked against an individual soldier, and I'm focusing on the rater, senior rater, reviewer fields with an effective date and email addresses. Taking that as inspiration, I've got a new table with an ID field as an auto number, contact ID, which will link our rating schemes, plural, to the contact ID that's in the contacts table. We've got the rater. For the officers, sometimes we've got intermediate raters, so added that field in. Senior rater, reviewer, and then wanting to know if the evaluation scheme for this individual with these with this rating chain has either been approved or not approved, and when it was approved, so we can track this to the individual rating scheme level. So we've got this table baked out for us. The next piece was to take that information and to build a related form, which is the contacts rating scheme form. Once it was built, I then clicked, drug, and dropped it onto a new tab. So I inserted a new page, called it evaluations, and then linked this as a master-child relationship of ID field from contacts to the contact ID that is being trapped on the contacts rating scheme. Looking at the contact rating scheme form, it's a little complicated, but step one was to open up the form in design view and add the fields into this interface. So drug over the rater, the ID for the senior, intermediate, senior rater, and reviewers and the schemes. And then as I drug over these additional fields, and just to give you a sense for how I've got it going on here. As I drug over the field and then clicked, and you can see how I can put that field into the grid. Allows it to stay a little bit more organized. So then I brought over the effective dates. And then the next piece was to, I needed to display the email address that's associated with the rater ID. So the way I've designed this interface is that these lookups for the rater IDs all the way to the reviewers are going to find values in the contacts table. So that means we're going to be storing we'll be storing people that are outside of our organization, but are responsible for rating our soldiers and officers. So in a future video, we'll have to address that scenario so that when you open up the contact list, you have a way to identify those individuals, and you don't remove them out from that list, because it'll have second order effects, removing them from the rating scheme. So anyways, we are going to get a capability here to look up the email. So I'll zoom into this formula. So it's an immediate if formula. So if the rater ID is null, so it means there is no rater ID, then I just leave it as blank. But if there is a rater ID, then I look up, using the DLOOKUP formula, the email address from contacts, leveraging the ID field, and looking for the ID that matches the rater ID. Same logic for the immediate rater ID and their email address, the senior rater, and then the reviewer. The next piece that I brought in, and it'll sort of become a little bit more self-explanatory as I go through conditional formatting, but I brought in the rater rank value and looked up that information leveraging the contact ID for the current rank of the soldier, officer, warrant, civilian that's in contact rank, current rank, which was in a previous video. And what that will do for us is it allow us to understand which rank is greater than another rank, so that we ensure that you don't have a senior rater who is of a lower rank than the rater, and the same would be said for your reviewers. So with all of that information that's available to us, the next piece was to build in conditional formatting. So clicking on a specific record, going to Format, Conditional Formatting, the rater value is checking to make sure that none of the other fields have the same value as the rater ID. So that if John Smith is the rater, then John Smith shouldn't be found in the immediate rater, senior rater, or reviewer fields. Additionally, for the record that we're on, we want to make sure that if Jamie is the record that you're on, you want to make sure that Jamie is also not being allowed to rate themselves. So that's what these fields are doing. So to create these fields, I created a new rule, and then I said the value is equal to a certain piece of information, and then I changed the font color. So in this case here, the field value is equal to a specific field. Getting into the immediate raters or intermediate raters, again, same rules, just making sure that the value doesn't match the rater, senior rater, reviewer, that the individual being evaluated or building the evaluation scheme on isn't in there themselves. And then we wanted to make sure that the intermediate rater is of an equal or greater than value to the rater. So we didn't want a intermediate rater showing up as a lesser rank than the rater. The senior rater, again, same business rules for the cross checks. And then we wanted to make sure that the senior rater outranked the rater, and then the reviewer was of an equal or higher rank than the senior rater. And then the reviewer, very similar business rules, rater, intermediate, senior rater, not the same individual, and then making sure that they were of equal or greater rank than the senior rater. And all of those checks then allowed us to have things going on. So in this case here, the senior rater outranks the reviewer. It's not passing test because this individual is the same as that individual, but now it passes because we've said that it's okay if the intermediate rater matches the rater's rank, but the senior rater needs to be of a lesser rank than the reviewer and greater than the intermediate rater and raters. And that's it for this video.